Hey everyone, Kevin P. McAuliffe here for Rampant Design Tools, and I'm back again with another tutorial. And in this lesson, we're going back to another fantastic product from Rampant Design Tools, and that's the Rampant Style Kits. And in this lesson, I'm always up for a challenge, and so we're going to talk about the Love Style Kit. Now, the Love Style Kit has very specific elements for you to get in and to create fantastic looks in your productions. And in this lesson, I'm going to be creating a look for a wedding video. Now, you saw the wedding video that I did in the intro. We're going to show you how to create that look very quickly and very easily. All right, now before I get rolling, I do want to talk just briefly about the actual style kit itself. I'm just going to come into my Rampant Design Tools folder, into my style kit folder, into the Love folder, and you'll see that we actually have quite a few elements that make up the Love Style Kit. We have 6 different categories, from animated elements to animated mats to dust effects, light effects, and transitions. We probably have a good 20 to 30 elements inside this one style kit. Now, before I get rolling into Premiere, I do want to mention that all of these elements are 4K. Now, don't worry if you're working in standard def, HD, or even 2K, because the elements will work the same no matter what type of project that you're working on. Now, in our project, we're going to be working HD, so I'm going to show you how you can take these elements and tailor them for your exact needs. All right, so let's just close this folder and let's head into Premiere. All right, so we are in Premiere, and here is the initial video that you watched at the intro to our tutorial. And I want to give a big thanks to EditStock for the use of this footage in this tutorial. It worked out perfectly, this wedding footage. And you can find these clips in this project and many more over at editstock.com. All right. So again, this is the initial video. This is the stripped down version. It doesn't have any of the Rampant Design Tools elements in it. It does have a title in here at the end because I don't need you to sit through the process of me creating a title, and it just has a fade to black at the end. Okay, so let's get in. Let's start stylizing our edit. Now for me, if you've watched my tutorials for Rampant Design Tools, you're going to know that I always describe these elements as the icing on the cake or the ice cream on the apple pie. They're really designed to take your great looking shots, your great looking timelines, and just make them look even better, just to enhance them even more with some fantastic stylistic looks. So let's start out, and I think I'm going to come to my dust effect first. I'm just going to choose this dust effect. Again, very subtle. And what we're going to do is just take this dust effect, and I'm going to apply it up here towards the top, put it on video track number 5, and we're going to end it right when we get to the end tag. The end tag is the very last shot that's going to give the sort of the description of what our video is. And with this style element, you'll remember that I talked about the fact that these elements are 4K. Now, how do we actually get in and see that in our timeline? What I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom back on my canvas to about 10%. I'm going to double click on my dust element. I'm going to come to the effects control window, and I'm going to select the motion parameter, and right away you can now see that 4K frame inside of my HD timeline. I'm going to take this element and just zoom it back a little bit, or zoom down on it. So that way it fits most of the frame. We'll just fit this back to be full frame. And at this point, I'm now ready to actually apply it or overlay it over top of our footage. I'm going to do that using a blend mode, and I'm going to use the additive blend mode. Now, once I do that, it's very subtle, but if you take a look, you can see those dust elements. Now, if we wanted to get really fancy, what we could do is we could take this element, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it onto video track number 7, just so you can see now that we've doubled up on the amount of dust that we had there from before. You'll see that if I shy that layer here, the topmost layer, that it's going to disappear and reappear. And you'll see that if I come back, there's that dust still falling, just not as much of it. Okay, so let me just delete this dust layer because, again, I'm going for subtle. I don't want to have too much dust. Let's now talk about transitions, because transitions are an important part of your timeline, and we've got some great ones inside of our Love Style Kit. Now we're going to do our first transition between these two shots right here. So let's come to the transitions bin. Now keep in mind, I didn't bring in all of the elements from the style kit. I only brought in the ones that I'm currently using in the timeline. So we got about 2 to 2.5 times more elements in our actual folder on our hard drive than we do have in the project right now. So keep that in mind as we're going forward. Okay, so the transition that we want to start out with is this one right here. I'm going to take it, you'll see I have an in and out point marked pretty much when we're at 100% black and 100% white. So let's take this element, drag it and drop it down over top of our shot right here. Now you'll see that the transition is a little bit on the long side. So let's take this and speed this up. Command or Control and R to call up the clip speed duration. I think I'll put the speed at about 250% and say OK. That's much better. We're going to take our shot. We're going to extend the outgoing tail down over top of the incoming head of the next shot. And again, you always hear me talk about keeping things organized. That's why I like putting everything back down into video track number 1. What we're also going to do is to take this element and shrink it right down, okay, to right about there. Very nice. We now need to get in and actually add the effect that's going to let us do the transition, and that effect is called a track matte. Okay, we're going to take our track matte key. I'm going to apply it to video track number 2, and once it's applied, you'll see because I have it up here inside of the source monitor and the effects control window's active, we now can see the parameters for this clip. We're going to leave the composite using alpha matte, which is what we actually have right now. You'll see there's the matte key right there. I'm just going to come in and I'm going to choose the layer that I wanted to reference, which is video track number 3. Now you'll notice that the transition is actually reversed. So all I'm going to do is just simply tell it to reverse the effect, and we now have that proper transition ready to go. Okay, so let's do the exact same thing for the next shot. We're just going to add a little edit in here so we can do the exact same technique. I'll just extend this down just a little bit here until we figure out exactly what we need for our next shot. There we go. I've already got the in and out point marked. Let's drag it and drop it. Maybe still a little bit long. Command or Control and R. Maybe we'll speed this up to 140. I think that's probably good. I'll say okay. I think that's good. Let's now again clean things up. We want to keep as much stuff on video track 1 as possible here. We'll just bring that back, trim it right back. Now, I could go in, I could go back to the effects window, I could type in track matte key, I could find it, we could do all those steps again. Or the easiest way to get around this is what we can do is simply select the clip that we already have the effect applied to, and I'm going to Command or Control and C on that clip to copy it. I'm going to head to the clip that we'd like to paste those parameters onto. We're going to use Option, Command, and V, Control, Alt, and V for all my Windows friends out there. And once I do that, the Paste Attributes window comes up. We want to paste that track matte key. I'm going to say OK, and guess what? We now have that next transition all set to go. Okay, so let's add another element in here. I'm going to come to my light effects here. Let's just twirl down our light effects. And the first one that I'm going to use is I'm going to use that lens flare that we actually had down towards the end of our timeline here, over top of the groom here, and it worked perfectly over here in the lower left-hand corner. I don't mind if I lose some of the detail in the chairs because, to be honest, the chairs are really not interesting. What we want to do is to make it look like that it was actually shot that way. So let's take the element, we're going to drag it and drop it down over top of our clip. We're just going to extend it down. Again, keep in mind, 4K, you're going to hear me saying that all the time. Let's just adjust the scaling right down. What we're also going to do is just reposition it over here towards the left side of the frame like such. And again, just like before, that additive blend mode, and take a look at what we have now. It actually looks like it's supposed to be like that. And I even like the fact that the shot's got a little bit of a shake to it and the flare moves as well, so it almost gives it that extra layer of realism. Okay? Now we got a couple other shots here, and what we're going to do is just head back to our light effects. Now the one light effect that I want to use is this one here. Now you might be thinking, well, Kev, this one looks really bright. Like, how are you going to get away with using that? Well, let's take it and we're going to drag it and drop it down into our timeline. I'm going to show you. Okay, we're going to extend this down. Let's extend it to, see if we can actually get it to fill the whole frame here. Nope, we can't, but that's okay, because I'm going to show you how we can actually double up on this element quickly and easily, and no one's even going to notice it. What we're going to do is the exact same technique that we did before. Again, we're scaling everything down to fit our frame. We're going to take this element, we're going to switch the blend mode again to additive, but you'll see that it takes our shot and pretty much just blows it right out. It's a little bit too much and a little bit overpowering. Remember, we talked about subtle. So all I'm going to do is take the opacity of this, let's put it down at maybe about 50%, and what you now have is an element that actually looks really good and looks like a bit of a light leak, and it's not overpowering and in your face. Now, how this is going to help us with this edit right here is I really like the look of this element, and I'd like to keep it going through the next shot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the element. We're going to come down, and I'm just going to paste it. Let's make sure we actually have the right layer selected here, V2. Let's paste it down there. And because the shot actually has an edit in it, you won't even notice the fact that it actually is a jump cut. And the beauty part is that because the shot is so different, the light leak or the light effect is going to accentuate different parts of the shot, so you won't even notice, or your client won't even notice, that you doubled up on that element. Okay? So let's go back. There's a couple other things that I do want to add in here, and I saw the very cool light effect right here. Very nice. And we're going to take this element, and we're just going to apply it over top of a few shots here. We'll just take it, drag it down here, and let's just see what it's actually going to do here. It actually completely disappears, which is perfect. So we're just going to take that right to there. And again, you know where we're going with this. Again, double click. We're going to come to Effects Control. Let's scale this right down. Put it right about there. You can see we're coming down to our additive blend mode. And there we go. Again, just very subtle, accentuating the highlights of the element and just making it look really cool. Okay, so we've got one more transition to put in before we get in and tackle that end animation that I had created. So let's do that. We're going to come back to our transitions here, and we have two of our animated mats, but one of the elements is just this transition here. Now again, exactly like what we did before, we're going to take the element, we're going to drag and drop it down into our timeline. Again, way too long. So Command and R, Control and R for all my Windows friends out there. Let's put this at about 300%. We're going to say OK. We're going to come down. That is the transition point right there. So we're going to need to see what this element is going to do. Let's just turn that layer on. That's almost looking pretty good right where it is right there. It almost fills the entire frame with white. Let's come to our Effects Control window. Take that, make it an additive blend mode. Looking very nice. What you now have is the transition going into the end element. Perfect. Okay. Now this end element I loved creating because I actually did something by accident and then realized that it was something kind of cool. Let me show you what I did. I'm going to come to the animated elements right here, and I'm going to take the sort of scroll or the lines that we have there, and when I originally took these and placed them into my timeline, I'll just take the clip and just drag it and drop it down here. It's a little bit on the long side, but we can speed that up. It's not a big deal. Again, Command and R, we'll speed it up to about 150 to see what that sort of looks like here. Very nice. I think that's good. Okay. Now it's again obviously way too big, so we're just going to use the exact same technique as before. Now keep in mind, I'm doing the same technique over and over again. You could use the copy and paste attributes parameter to do that each time if you wanted to. You could have the elements too big, then go through and adjust them all in one shot. What we're going to do is just scale this right down here. And here's where I did something kind of completely by accident. I was just playing around with a few of the parameters, and I grabbed the rotation and I just swung it right around. And as soon as I had swung it right around to 180 degrees, I realized that the one thing that I didn't want was for the element to sit over top of our bride and groom's face, even if I moved it up all the way to the top of the frame. However, if I rotated this element 180 degrees and we moved it all the way south, we could put that element right there so that it complements the text and looks really cool. Now, what I should probably do here is to take the drop shadow effect. I'm just going to copy that, and I'm going to paste it onto our element here. Let's just actually extend the distance of the drop shadow out a bit. Now keep in mind, because I've rotated the element, it's actually facing the wrong direction. I actually want to have it down about like such. Let's just increase that just a little bit, the opacity of the drop shadow, and that's looking pretty good. I think I'm also just going to adjust the distance. I think it's a little bit too far away. I want it to be subtle. There we go. Perfect. Okay. Now, again, another fantastic element that when I was first looking at it, I was like, wow, where am I going to use this element? I'm going to head right back to the dust effects, and we're going to call up our heart element. And as soon as I saw this, and as soon as I saw this shot, I knew exactly how we were going to do this. Now, what's important to keep in mind about this is stacking order is exceptionally important. If I take this element and I place it over top of these two elements, it's going to appear over top of our special day and over top of our little scrolling line here. So I don't want to do that. We want to take these elements and move them up so that we can take our heart element and put it as the bottommost layer. Now, it takes a little bit for the element to get going, and again, you could see it's a little bit on the big side, so we'll just shrink it down, and I think we're just going to position it just up ever so slightly. Just so that it sort of gives our bride and groom a bit of a hug there. Perfect. Now, we want to make sure that this element is done and established before we start to fade out, so we are going to need to speed it up just a little bit. I think I'm going to put it at about 175 and say okay. Now let's just see what it does here. Perfect, goes right around, stays there, and then we fade out. So we now have this pretty much working exactly the way that we want it to. If I come back a little bit, we can give it a play here. Alright, so I have to say, pretty impressive. Now, why would I say pretty impressive? Well, not only did it look fantastic, but keep in mind, we really only used one very basic effect. I didn't need to get in there, monkey around with all these different effects with different parameters and this and that, because in a lot of cases, that's what bogs down your workflow. With these Rampant Design Tools elements, it's literally drag, drop, and go. Take the effect, drop it on, adjust that transfer mode, take a look, looks great, move on to the next shot. This is how you can keep powering your edits forward and keeping them looking as good as they can possibly look in every project you work on.